Rod Khleif's story starts far from the world of massive real estate portfolios. He immigrated to the US from the Netherlands as a kid and grew up in deep poverty, wearing Goodwill clothes and eating cereal with powdered milk because it was cheaper than real milk. At age 14, he even lied about his age to get a job flipping burgers just so he could buy his own clothes. Then one moment changed everything. His mother bought a small house for $30,000, and a few years later, it had appreciated by $20,000 while she slept. That sparked Rod's fascination with real estate. Over the next few decades, he built a massive portfolio of thousands of properties until the 2008 crash wiped out about $50 million of his wealth. I'm Ryan Atkinson, and you're listening to the UpFlip Podcast, where we give you actual advice on how you can start a similar business. And today, Rod is hopping on the podcast to talk about mindset, building businesses, and so much more. So, Rod, so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Oh, thanks for having me here, Ryan. Let's have some fun today, brother.
I'm excited to have some fun. So let's dive into our first question and really going back to the early days of Rod's, because you, as I said, you grew up in deep poverty, wearing Goodwill clothes, drinking powdered milk with your cereal. What specific money habits did you learn in those early days that really helped shape your entrepreneurial mindset?
Ooh, money habits. Well, I'll tell you, you stole a little my thunder with your opening there because, I talk about that Dutch, immigrating from the Netherlands, not having anything, and I'll be candid. I'm sure you've got listeners that had it harder than we do and maybe even have it harder now with all the things that are changing via AI and everything. But luckily I knew I wanted more, and I learned money habits from my mom. Like you mentioned, she invested in the stock market successfully. She actually babysat kids so we'd have enough money to eat. And with her babysitting money, she invested, and she bought that house across the street, made 20 grand. I'm like, what? This is when 20 grand was a lot of money. I'm like, you've made 20 grand. You didn't do anything. Screw college. I'm getting into real estate. So, my first year in real estate, I'm at about 8 grand. My second year, maybe 10 grand. But my third year, I made $100,000, which back in 1980 was some pretty decent change. And so, what happened between year 2 and 3 that caused me to 10x my income? Well, what happened was I went to work for a guy in real estate, and he taught me about the importance of mindset and psychology. And, fast forward to today, like you mentioned, I've owned over 2,000 houses that I've rented long-term. I have thousands of apartment units now. I'm buying senior housing now. And in 2006, my net worth went up $17 million while I slept. And you might say, wow. And I said, wow. And I got a head so big, I could barely fit it through a door. And, when that happens, God of the universe will give you a nice little smack down. And that's the $50 million that I lost conservatively in 2008 and 9. And so what I'm known for talking about on my podcast and at my events is really the mindset it took to have the 50 million to lose in the first place. And maybe more importantly, how to recover from that kind of a loss to the success that I'm blessed to have today. So we can go anywhere you want with that, brother.
Yeah, let's talk about building it up to the 50 million. The 2005, 2006, you're getting a 50 million portfolio. Obviously you grew up, in poverty. I think it's fair enough to say there. How did your mindset change when it comes to money? Were you just spending a ton, and what should be the advice for someone listening today about that?
No, absolutely not spending a ton. I spend now. You spend when you have it. You don't spend while you're building. I remember I mentioned this before we started recording, Ryan. I called that a $50 million seminar. It was an expensive freaking seminar, don't get me wrong, but I've built a lot of businesses, and one of the businesses actually was a cold air balloon business. And I'm answering your question with this. So when I had 500 houses, I was living for free in an apartment that I got for free because I was putting up a balloon once a month on this apartment complex, big cold air balloon, the big 30-foot balloons. And that was one of my businesses. And, could I have bought a house? Could I have, bought a Lambo and all that stuff I thought was important? But no, back then I was in growth mode. But I'll tell you, for me, it really wasn't even about the money. The key was I loved it. I freaking loved it. And one day I looked up and I'm like, dude, I've got 500 freaking houses. It's like, holy crap. And then I've had 2,000 so far in my career, but it was really more the fun. I didn't spend a lot of money back then. I wore fake watches because I wanted girls, so I tried to look cool and all that stuff. But now I've got, I've probably got $2 million worth of watches now. But the point is, you don't spend the money till you have it. And ideally, you spend the money you make from your investments, maybe like your real estate investments, for example, or, business income or something. When you're in growth mode, grind for a few years like most people won't. You live the rest of your life like most people can't.
When you're in growth mode, for someone that's also in growth mode, they're building their wealth. Obviously, there are smart investments to be had there. You're not doing the Lambos, the Rolexes, whatever.
That's not the smart investments.
Yeah, those are not the smart investments.
No.
But when you're in growth mode, what are the smart investments that you did and now what
Well,
what you advise other people?
that's a layup. Of course, it's real estate. That's what I teach. I host the largest real estate podcast really in the world now for commercial real estate, and I teach people how to buy apartment complexes. But I don't do houses anymore, and I can explain why if you like. But when I lost everything, it was my houses that pulled me down. I had 800 houses, and I had several apartment complexes, and it was the houses that pulled me down. And so what I learned in that is if I had just been in multifamily, which is what I teach, I would have easily survived that 08-09 crash. But it was the 800 houses that I had that pulled me down. And I only owed 30 cents on the dollar. Don't think that I was over leveraged. And I get hate all the time. No one should own 800 houses. You're why I can't buy a house. No, you can't buy a house because you're in your mom's freaking basement whining. But yeah. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that. So real estate then. That's going to be the smart investment.
For sure. Duh. What can you buy that someone else pays for? If that interests you, I'd encourage you not to do houses. At the very least, do a duplex, a triplex, a fourplex, but even better, do larger than that. And I know that sounds scary, but that's what I teach, and it's not that scary. And my students own right around 300,000 units, I believe, under my teaching. It's the largest, as I mentioned to you before we started recording. It's more than everybody else that teaches this combined, and something I'm very proud of. And and then of course, every other asset class as well, mobile home parks, industrial flex space, self-storage, you name it. But the bottom line is it's real estate for sure, and people think, well, how do I get into real estate? I don't have any money. Well, here's the thing. There's a lot of money looking for a home. And so, what I teach my students is how to raise that money. And, people that have gotten killed in the stock market or God forbid, crypto, it's been devastating. And so, real estate, you've got security, you've got collateral, real collateral. So definitely real estate.
Why should you not invest in homes, housing to get started?
Well, no, okay, let me rephrase that. Listen, get started. And if it's a home, fine, okay? The problem with investing in houses, and listen, you can make a lot of money investing in houses. It's fine. I made a lot of money for a while. But if you have a house and it's empty, you're 100% vacant. And if you have a house, let's say it's cash flowing $500 a month, you're like, oh man, this is fantastic. Well, that tenant moves out. You're going to pay probably $3,000 to $5,000 to make it ready again, paint it, maybe replace carpet, whatever. You're going to lose a month or two rent, and you've just eaten up your cash flow for a year or two. That's the problem with houses. If you've got even a fourplex and one unit goes empty, you're probably still breaking even. Okay. And of course, the higher the number of units, the more safe it is. And that's what I discovered when I lost everything in 08 and 9, there's other factors at play as well. But listen, if you go out there and buy some houses, that's how most people get started. But here, I've had some of the most successful operators on the planet here in my studio, on my couch, own thousands and thousands of units. And I ask them a question, Ryan, because I know what they're going to say. And I want my listeners to hear it from them, not from me. I say, what would you tell 18-year-old self if you told them something? And they always say, go bigger, faster. So there you go. That's the bottom line. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What does go bigger, go faster mean?
More units. Instead of doing a house, do a fourplex. Instead of doing a fourplex, do a 10 unit, a 20 unit, a 30 unit. And I got to tell you something. I'm helping my son buy a house right now. And the crap we're dealing with the mortgage company is more difficult than if I was buying a 50 unit. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding at all. It's more challenging than buying a 50 unit because, when you're buying a commercial real estate property, which is higher than 4 units, 5 units or up is commercial, the bank is looking at the property's ability to service the debt, not your debt to income. So it's actually easier to buy a larger property. And I know it sounds crazy, but it's the truth.
Are you working a 9 to 5, but dream of entrepreneurial freedom? Look no further than the UpFlip Academy, the #1 entrepreneurial platform with 20 plus step-by-step courses taught by active business owners, live workshops, hands-on skill training, a business idea database, and a thriving entrepreneur community to keep you accountable. Click the link in the description below to join the UpFlip Academy today and make this the year you stopped dreaming and started building your business without guesswork.
The mindset to get started, I know you're really big on mindset. So if someone is on the ledge of getting started in real estate or any business endeavor, advice that you would give to them that's listening right now?
Absolutely. I'll do this as quick as I can. So there's several steps. Like this is how I had 50 million to lose and how I got it back. Okay.
Yeah.
So it starts with goals. You got to know what it is you want. You come to one of my boot camps, the first thing we do is goal setting on steroids, because you got to create that burning desire, that hunger. So you push through fear, you push through limiting beliefs, you get back up when you get knocked down. It takes goals, and you got to know why the goals are a must. Now, if you're not interested in real estate, on my link tree, I do a goal setting workshop. It's rodslinks.com, rods plural, links plural.com. At the bottom is a goal setting workshop. There's a guide you can download. I don't sell you anything. Just go there. Here's the problem, Ryan. People spend more time planning a freaking birthday party than they do designing their lives. Doing your goals is designing your freaking life. Have your spouse do it. Have your kids, if they're over 10 years old, do it. Design their life. So it starts with goals. And then candidly, you got to make a decision. So back then when I lost everything, I'm like, I knew I had to reassociate with my goals. And then I had to make a decision, get up off underneath the rock, out from under the rock you're hiding under, licking your wounds. And I don't mean dip your toe in the water, man, you make a decision. I don't mean 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I mean, it's freaking done. The Latin root for the word decision means to cut off. So a great analogy is if you're going to attack the island, you burn your ships because you're taking their damn ships home. That's a decision. Okay. It's freaking done. Yeah,
that's
right?
a phenomenal quote.
But it's the truth. You're in. When you make a decision, it's commitment, 100% commitment, you're done. And once you're committed, you're like a train on a track. If you don't commit, you're going to get knocked off track, right? And then the next piece is you got to take the first step. Right. And, Dr. Martin Luther King says you take that first step in faith, the next step will be revealed. And, I get lots of analytical people, and I love you if you're listening and that's you, but I know you also know how you have to check off every single box before you make a move. Well, you can't do that to get started. You're not going to see the whole path. And I'll give you a great analogy. You can drive and this is for you analytical peeps that are listening. You can drive all the way across the United States at night with your headlight only seeing 50 feet in front of you. You can make it. Other people have made it before. You may have obstacles. It's the same way in my business, buying real estate or candidly any business. But you got to get started. You got to take that first step. I see it with my students all the time. It's kind of the law of the first deal. And my students are called my warriors. One of my warriors. It takes it's 4 months, it's 6 months, it might even be 8 months, and they haven't got a deal yet, and they're whining, and I'm kicking them in the ass. Come on, you got this. Go make it happen. And they get one, and the next thing they have 3. I'm like, what just happened? They realize that the delay is all between their ears. And a lot of people fear failure, Ryan. And I'm going to tell you, don't fear failure, fear regret. Fear being in the same place you are a year or two from now, unless you love where you are right now. But, there was this nurse in Australia named Bronnie Ware. She was a hospice nurse, and she asked her patients a question. These people were dying, Ryan, and she asked them a question, and it was, do you have any regrets? And she wrote a book about it, something like The 5 Regrets of Dying. It's a bestseller. The number one regret was not living my life, not living what I know I'm capable of. I can't think of anything worse than that. Fear that. Don't fear failure. I call my failures seminars. I've built 29 businesses so far in my career, several worth tens of millions of dollars. Most are spectacular flaming seminars. Okay. So, as I mentioned to you before we started recording, we fail our way to success, and it's the truth. Don't fear that. One other quick thing. I know I'm rambling a lot here, but don't let your business be your identity. Let it be your vehicle. If any one of those failures had been my identity, that would mean I have failed and I'm a failure. No, it's your vehicle. Vehicle fails, so what? Move on to the next vehicle, okay? So very, very important. There's a lot of people about to lose their jobs, Ryan. I hope you know that. I mean, with AI, it's kind of sobering. And, in fact, I just told my daughter she needs to start looking for something. She works for me and she's high paid for me, and she's got to start looking for something because she does SEO and marketing. It's basically, I can do it, with a computer now. And so if that's you and you're listening, by God, get going on a freaking side hustle, okay? Start thinking about what you might like. There's opportunities to buy businesses because 10,000 people a day are turning 65. If it's real estate, get your ass to my boot camp. Whatever it is, go learn it now. Start now so that when the shoe drops, you're not going, oh my God, what am I going to do? You've already got something else started, You agree with me on that?
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you on that. Like having a side hustle, especially in today's day and age, is so key. There's so many ways to make money in this world. You just have to find what you're passionate about. One question I want to go deeper with you on is knowing your goals.
when I take people through their goals, I don't care what, about what you can just do in a year. Okay. I'm interested in your lifetime goals. We start with the stuff, the houses, the boats, the cars, the jet skis, the planes, whatever it is. Start with the stuff, everything you could ever possibly want. Start with your income goals in 3 years. But you got to be measurable and specific. I want to make, 300 grand a year by June 1st of so-and-so. So income goals and money in the bank in case what hits the fan fund in so many years. Then I talk about things you want to do in your lifetime. What all do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to travel? Okay. Everywhere you'd ever want to go. And I tell people, take the lid off your brain. Don't limit yourself. There's nothing you can't do, be, or have. You just have to decide, and then you have to take massive freaking action. That's it. You can do anything. So everything you want to do, everything you want to learn in this lifetime. Do you want to learn to fly a plane? Do you want to learn another skill set? I want to learn how to play the drums, whatever it is, whatever you want to learn. And then lastly, who do you want to help? Because we'll do more for others than we'll ever do for ourselves. So this is all high level. Those are some of the pieces of my goal setting workshop. And because you write down who you want to help. And then I have people identify their number one goal and their top 3 1-year goals. I haven't put a number by each goal, so how many years it's going to take to achieve it. And I haven't identified their number one goal and their top 3 1-year goals. And then I have them write down why those goals are an absolute freaking must to achieve using emotionally charged words. So I can show my kids what success looks like. So I can retire my beautiful wife, whatever it is, use emotion, because the whys are what drive you. It's not the goals as much as the whys. But then I also have them put some pain in there, Ryan, if they don't achieve the goal and make it freaking hurt. Why? Because as human beings, we'll do more to avoid pain than gain pleasure. So I haven't put down, so I don't feel like a failure. So I don't fail my kids. So I don't live a life of regret. Make it freaking hurt, because that's the fuel, right? That's what's going to get your ass up in the morning, stay up late like I say, to grind for a few years, like most people will never do, and live the rest of your life like most people will never live, right? That's what it takes.
That is so good there. I want to ask, so you can set your goals and stuff, but one thing that happens to me a lot, I'm sure it happens to our listeners, okay, I have the intentions, I'll write down my goals, but then I don't revisit them, or just I kind of just put them in the drawer and I don't.
Let's talk about that. Okay. If I'd have known we were going to dig deep on goals, I would have showed you my planner. I've got my goals in the front. I've got my goals on the wall. I've got my goals everywhere. Okay. And candidly, you should look at them ideally morning and night. Really. I mean, if you really want to do this the right way. Now, most mornings, I'll tell you what I do, because I use gratitude. Gratitude is the most powerful emotion we have available to us. It lowers our blood pressure, strengthens our immune system, brings us closer to our spirituality, and it's how we bring everything we want into our lives. So I'll sit on my recliner in my other building here at my compound, and I'll just be grateful for the things that I have in my life, the people I love, and so on. And then I'll do gratitude for the things that I want as if I already have them. And I've gotten emotional being grateful for things I haven't gotten yet. And I know I lost a few of you on that. Oh God, we're in foo-foo land. Well, this is how I had 50 million to lose and how I got it back. So ignore it at your peril. Okay. Because it freaking works. You call it prayer. I call it manifesting, but whatever, it absolutely works.
Okay, so one thing that I have a hard time with, and I'm going to ask you personal questions here, and again, maybe the audience will relate to this. So there's sometimes for my own business, I'll set goals. January, daily, I was revisiting goals where I was okay, here's what I did today. Here are my goals for the month. Here's what I did. But I found myself really we had a really slow start to the year at January and February, where it was well, maybe I'm putting too much pressure on myself to hit these goals, where I'm not hitting these goals and I'm burning myself out. What's advice for the 15, 20 seconds I just gave you there for someone that feels yeah.
Well, I will tell you, listen, if your goals are compelling, they juice you, they motivate you, they shouldn't burn you out. Okay, you should be. They need to be goals you're excited about. So I would tell you, if that's the case, revisit if they're exciting, because they should propel you. They shouldn't burn you out. You should want to achieve them. Okay, that's the key piece. There is that desire. I think that's the only answer I could give you on that regard. But hey, are you going to hit every goal? No. But I got to tell you, I wish I had my planner. I could show you. I've got pictures in the back of it that have been in there 25 years, and I've hit damn near every one of them. I have one picture of a guy with a six-pack, and I put my face on it. I don't have the six-pack. It's well insulated. It's in there, but you can't see it. But damn near everything else. The Lamborghini before I ever got it. I built a beautiful $10 million mansion on the beach that pictures look just like it before I ever built it. Even this compound I have now, the pictures in there look just like some of the stuff in my it's crazy how this stuff works. So when you do your goals, at the end of that process, if you do it with me, I'll tell you, go get pictures. I've got vision boards, in my exercise room. I've got them next to my recliner when I do that in the mornings, and you do it enough. It gets into your psyche. What goals do is they trigger something called your reticular activating system. Okay. And that's that filter in your brain that points you in the direction it thinks you're interested in. The greatest example is when you first buy a car. You never really noticed them before. You buy a car, they're everywhere, right? Were they there before? Yeah. That's your reticular activating system. So if you associate with your goals regularly, your brain or God or whatever you want to believe will point you in the direction of that. And candidly, in my opinion, conspire to help you achieve them.
That's it's so good. I feel like it's a skill to be able to like have a target in your mind of where you want to go, even though you don't have it yet, but be able to identify that target. I feel like that comes back to like manifestation of like, I don't have the Lamborghini, but like I can vision it when I know what to hit.
If you don't have a target, you're never going to hit it. If you don't have an outcome in mind, you're going to just be floating around with every storm like a boat pushing you different directions. You got to have that target in mind. Now, is it a straight line to the target? Never. Here's a success formula. I learned this from Tony Robbins. I spent 23 years with him. You have a target outcome in your mind. If you hit a wall, you reassociate with that target and you change your approach. If you hit another wall, you reassociate with that outcome in your mind and you change your approach, and rinse and repeat. That is the ultimate success formula right there. You just don't give up. You change your approach and you move forward. I've been on the verge of bankruptcy with big companies that ended up turning into $10 million company, I remember, because I changed my approach and I didn't give up. Very often, especially right now with AI changing things, you may have to reinvent yourself. And I've had to reinvent myself many times with all these quote unquote seminars that I've had. So don't fear that stuff. Don't fear that stuff. Anything you put your total focus to will flourish. And, we go through these phases, peaks and valleys as an entrepreneur. That's the life of an entrepreneur. Is it worth it? You better freaking believe it's worth it, but you're going to have peaks and valleys, but it's your mindset and your psychology that keeps you going. Another piece in that vein is your peer group. Be very careful who you allow to influence you, right? I'll tell you a funny story. Let me back up for a second on fear and limiting beliefs. Everybody has fear. We achievers, we call it stress. But when I immigrated this country, I didn't speak English, okay? I was 6 years old. I found out what bullies were for the first time, okay? And I got my ass kicked occasionally. Then my mom sent me to school. Hang on. This is really funny. I just happen to have them right here. In these wooden shoes. These are the actual freaking wooden shoes.
No way.
Yeah, I swear to God, because we found them when we put her in assisted living. And these leather shorts the Germans wear for Oktoberfest. Crack cocaine for the freaking bullies. So I got my ass kicked again. And then, the bullies had chased me home, and my mom had chased them off with a fly swatter. So the next day, ass beaten. And I came up with this limiting belief that I wasn't good enough. And I used to ask myself, how can I show them I'm good enough? And a lot of people have these limiting beliefs that hold them back. I'm not good enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not old enough. I'm not smart enough. I don't have enough money. Here's the thing to remember. The reason the acronym for belief systems is BS is 99% of them are BS. But, we believe they're real. I mean, I used to be afraid to raise my hand in front of 10 kids in the classroom, and now I speak in front of thousands and thousands of people a year in flip-flops because I looked at that limiting belief. I recognized that it was BS and it dissipated. So if you've got one, if you're listening, if you're consciously aware, sometimes you're not consciously aware, consciously aware of a limiting belief, drag it out of the daylight, look at it with your adult rational mind, and you realize it's BS and it'll mitigate. And it's important that you do that.
So a goal that I have in mind for the next, 16 months or so is to sell a company that I'm working on. I feel like I do have a limiting belief on what we can actually get to evaluation process here. And I'm also having a hard time, setting the goal of exactly what I want to do. What advice would you give to me one-on-one here of dissipating that limiting belief and also setting a good, not attainable, realistic goal. Yeah.
I'm talking more about emotional related limiting beliefs. So your limiting belief is is a financial limiting belief. If it were me, I would look for corroborating evidence that proves it's possible. That's what I would do to mitigate that limiting. Have other people done it? That's what I would look. In your case, that's what I would do is look for that. And hey, if they can do it, I can do it, right? So maybe that's an answer. I mean, that's just a quick top of the mind thing. But yeah, don't limit yourself. My God, there's nothing, like I said, there's nothing you can't do, be, or have. You just got to believe in it. And you got to focus on the positive positive. The most successful people on the planet have the highest degree of focus, and where your focus goes, energy flows. And, but whatever you focus on gets larger. If you focus on the fact that you're not going to get what you're going to get what you focus on. I get people that call me and say, how do I get out of student loan debt? I'm like, wrong freaking question. How do you make so much money? The debt's irrelevant is what you should be asking. They asked Mother Teresa if she was anti-war. She said, no, I'm pro-peace. I mean, you get what I'm saying, right? I listened to 2 podcasts. I'm at about 30 million downloads on my podcast, which it doesn't sound like a lot, but for a podcast, it's not bad. And I listened to 2 podcasts, Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss. I try to get both sides of the aisle. And on Tim Ferriss's show, he interviews the best and this is a focus-related topic. I'm just elaborating on this. He interviews the best of the best in the world, like Michael Phelps, the swimmer, athletes like NFL, NBA players, billionaires like Ray Dalio, actors like Arnold, Hugh Jackman, Ed Norton, heads of the biggest companies in the world like Zuckerberg. And what he does is he deconstructs their success. And I started to hear a pattern, Ryan. We analyzed this. It's for my own edification. 85% of them meditate. What does meditation enhance? Focus, right? Isn't that interesting? Best people in the world meditate. Yeah.
That makes me happy because I meditate. And so hopefully I'm on the right track right there.
Love it. Love it. Love it.
Okay. So another thing that comes to goals, there's really 2 ways you can go is like, obviously you need your discipline for goals, but you also need like your systems for goals.
You need a plan. Bottom line, you do your goals and you got to come up with a plan. And, the best way to do a plan, I've never done it this way, but I've heard it enough times to know that it's the most effective, is to work backwards from your goal. Okay. If I need to get this, how often do I need to do this? How often do I need to do that? And you just lay that out. So, okay, I've got to make 50 calls a week. What is it? 5 calls a day, whatever it is. You back into what you believe it's going to take to achieve that goal. And that is a very effective strategy. Okay. But me, I just have my goals in front of me. By the way, on my, if you go to my Rod's links and you do my goal setting session, I have at the end of that, I have about 10 minutes where I teach you my weekly planning process. Incredibly effective. It's how I managed 2 large companies at the same time. And that'll really help you if you've got any overwhelm at all in what you do. It massively mitigates any overwhelm, even eliminates overwhelm, and keeps you focused on what's absolutely most important, income generating activity. And so, yeah, it's really powerful. It's at that Rod's links if you want to check it out, if you're listening. But one other piece is, again, who you hang out with as you're in this entrepreneurial journey, because so many people default to people they went to school with or that they work with. And those people may have their own limiting beliefs or fears, may fear of losing you, fear of feeling less than if you succeed. And sometimes it's family. I'm going to tell you, love your family, but choose your peers. When I was losing everything in 2008, I was in Tony Robbins' Platinum Partnership. It was about $100,000 at the time. It's even more than that now. And it was very small. There were like 30 people in there. And there were people in there that were killing it in that crash. And they're like, get up, you puss, 50 million, schmillion, go make something happen. Now that's who you want to be around when you're growing this thing, right? People that think what you think is hard is easy. So go out there, decide what you're going to do as your vehicle if you're listening, and get around people that are doing it. That's why my coaching program's so freaking successful, because that rising tide lifts all ships. But get around people that are doing what you want to do, that think what you think is hard is easy, and it absolutely shortens your learning curve in a big way.
Amazing stuff there. Brian, I want to ask you one more question before we dive to our Fan Blitz questions. Just doing like a quick reflection on like, your life, your career. Is there a moment that you felt like you grew the most personally?
That's a great question. And it's actually a layup for what I wanted to share. So
I can't be that good of a question then.
Oh, it really is a good question because, when I immigrated and I lived in Denver, I always knew I wanted to live on the beach. And of course, there's no beach in Denver. It's in the middle of the country. But I would visualize the palm trees and the sand and the surf. And 20 years later, I built this mansion I was just describing. Just to give you a quick description, I owned the beach on one side. I had my boats on the back side. It was called a Gulf to Bay. Okay. Big waterfall from the second floor balcony into the pool. You had to walk through the pool to get the waterfall, walk through the waterfall to get to the pool. Big spiral staircase up through the middle, wine cellar elevator. On the second floor, I had aquariums built around the staircase that cost me almost $200,000. So this gives you an idea of the house. 2 months after I moved in, I'm floating in the pool at night. I'd worked for this thing for 20 freaking years, Ryan. 2 months after I moved in, I'm floating in the pool at night. It's changing colors. It's got fiber optic lighting. It was spectacular. And I'm looking up at this testament to my ego. It was to prove to the freaking world I was good enough. If that didn't do it, forget it. My family's inside sleeping. I had the Maserati and the Mercedes and the boat and jet skis and all the stuff I thought was important. And I got depressed. Like, this is 2 months after I moved in. I don't mean a little depressed. I mean like, holy crap, depressed. And what I discovered And I'm like, how can I be depressed? Like I've achieved success like times 10,000. And what I discovered is there were three things happening. And this is why I said your question was a layup. The first thing was you should never achieve a big goal without having other goals lined up behind it. Like the good book says, without a vision, the people perish. You need a vision for the future. The second thing is it's never about the goals. You got to have them to create that hunger and burning desire to get up and push through fear and limiting beliefs. Or if you're comfortable, we know the comfort zone is a nice warm place and nothing freaking grows there, right? So to get past that, you got to have that hunger. But the happiest days of a boat owner's life is examples of the day they buy the boat and the day they sell the boat, right? You need the goals, but they're not going to make you happy. But the happiness comes from progress and growth. Okay. You've got to be growing. And I didn't know how I was going to grow beyond there. But the third big thing was I was totally focused on me. Rod. Show the world I matter. Blah, vomit. And that's the year I went and saw Tony Robbins. And I found out that he fed families for the holidays. And I'm like, what a concept. Do something for someone else. I'm embarrassed to say I had to be 40 to get that memo, but I went to one of his events and found that out. So I called my brother in Denver. I said, bro, let's feed 5 families because I was going to go see him for Thanksgiving in Denver. And so he called his church, found 5 families that really needed help. We got food and toys for the kids, frozen turkeys and stuff. And the third house changed my life. We go to this house and there's this Hispanic woman with 5 kids. She sees all the stuff on the porch. She starts crying and she was in a shack. I mean, a shack. She starts crying. Her kids come out, 2 of the older ones start crying. I start crying and I'm hooked. And I'm blessed to say, and please don't tune me out for this, guys, if you want success, okay? Because you would be making a big mistake. And this is not ego when I'm sharing with you here. In the last 26 years, I've fed somewhere over 150,000 children in my area here, at-risk kids for the holidays. I provided tens of thousands of backpacks to local kids with school supplies that don't have basic supplies for school. Don't get me started on that. I've done thousands and thousands of teddy bears to local police departments for their officers to keep in their vehicles if they encounter a child in a traumatic situation. And Tony Robbins calls it the science of achievement. Achievement's a science. The science of achievement versus the art of fulfillment. Like I say, achievement's a science. You want to learn real estate? Get your butt to my boot camp. It's at that Rod's links. If you want, but fulfillment is an art. Figure out what juices you. For me, it's kids. It's also the elderly. I'm doing senior housing now. Maybe for you, it's animals, the environment, whatever it is, give back right now. Don't say to yourself, well, you had money, that's why you gave back. That's how I got the money. That's how God works, okay? What you give, you receive. Give back right now. And I will tell you, success will come much faster to you because power moves to those who serve. Bottom line, that's just the way the world works.
Really good stuff there. Rod, I want to thank you so much for the episode today. Let's dive into our fan blitz questions. These are questions submitted from our community. If you want to join in on world-class entrepreneurs listeners, email me at ryan@upflip.com and we will get all your questions answered. But Rod, ready for our last 5 here?
Let's do it.
Number 1, what's the biggest mindset difference between entrepreneurs who build wealth and those who stay stuck?
Fear. That's easy. Yeah, fear.
When someone experiences a major business failure, what's the first mental shift they need to make to move forward?
I answered that earlier. It's reassociate with your goals, create that burning hunger again. That's the absolute first step. And then you make a decision and then you take that first step back to the life you need.
Going back to your first question here, you said people shouldn't fear failure. They should fear regret. What does that actually look like in how someone runs their life or business?
Well, if you do your goal session with me, I have you define what you want, but I also have you define what happens if you don't achieve those goals. And really, that pain, again, people will do more to avoid pain than gain pleasure. And that's how you propel yourself. I know it's a negative way to do it, but it's a very powerful way to do it. Tony Robbins does this exercise where he has you magnify your pain, turns the lights down. You got 3,000 people crying and screaming and everything else, and to get leverage on yourself. So you make that change that you need to make. It's a very powerful exercise. He calls it the Dickens process. But the bottom line is you need to create that pain on yourself so you go kick ass and make it happen.
What's the fastest way to upgrade the people around you?
Go find a group that's doing what you want to do, that's better than you are, that knows more than you are, that has more money than you do. And just by being there, it will elevate you.
If you feel fear or self-doubt creeping in, what's a specific mental process you use to push through it?
Action. Action mitigates fear, okay? If I don't care if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I call it stress, but that's what we achievers call fear. If I'm stressed, I will literally get up, I will get my notebook, I'll write down some things I'm going to do, or maybe I'll even go do something because that mitigates it. The other thing is gratitude. You cannot be fearful and grateful at the same time. You can't be angry and grateful at the same time. Like I said, gratitude is the most important foundational emotion we have.
Rod, you're the absolute man. I am feeling like so inspired from this episode. This is going to be one that I'm going to be replaying a whole lot. So thank you so much for being here today. If someone's like,
Thanks,
oh my
brother.
gosh, I need to learn more about Rod, where can they connect with you, get all the links and everything?
rodslinks.com, linkspearl.com. My goal setting is there. My bootcamp site is there. You come for $47 freaking dollars for 2 days of training. So don't tell me your excuses, okay? If you want to come. And it's training. It's not like some big sales pitch, okay? And there's a bunch of free resources there. All my social medias there. My podcast link is there. If you're interested in real estate, you really should start listening to my podcast. It'll help demystify a lot of things. But thanks, brother. I really appreciate you having me on. This has been a real treat because it's always fun when you're the one doing all the talking, right?
Rod, you're the man. Appreciate you so much.
Thanks, bud.
Listeners, that was a great episode. 3 quick takeaways for you. There was a lot here, but I'm going to distill this down. Number 1, know your goals. And once you know your goals, take action on it. That's like one of the biggest takeaways. You have to know your goals if you want to achieve something great in life. Number 2, limiting beliefs. Get rid of any limiting beliefs that you do have. If you have them, identify them, call them out, and get rid of them. Number 3, I'm going to go back to action, but action mitigates fear and stress. If you are fearful, if you're stressed, take action. It's going to be one of the best ways to mitigate both of those. Amazing episode with Rod. I'm honestly super inspired after listening to that episode. So I hope you guys were able to take something away as well. Looking forward to next week's episode. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any new episodes that are coming out. And we will see you next Monday.